Thanks, Brian. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Summerside City Council Committee of the Whole meeting for July 2nd, 2024, here in beautiful downtown Summerside. Welcome members of the public, those who are joining us in person and those who are joining us remotely. Just a quick note, we have one councillor who is joining us remotely and he cannot hear us, so there's a little back and forth. That's why we started about 3 minutes late. Again, for members of the public, we have 3 meetings tonight, but they'll all just flow one into the next. The first is a planning board meeting. Members of planning board are Councillors Duran, Morrison, Snow, and myself. Then there's a committee of the whole, and then there's we call a special council meeting. So with that, I will call the planning board meeting to order here at 5:03 p.m. on July 2nd, 2024. I'll ask for a motion from a member of planning board for approval of the agenda as presented. Councillor Morrison, second. Councillor Duran, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll proceed with the agenda as presented. We begin each one of our meetings here at the City of Summerside by acknowledging that the land upon which we gather is unceded Mi'kmaq territory. Abogway is covered by the historic treaties of peace and friendship. We pay our respects to the Indigenous Mi'kmaq people who have occupied this island for over 12,000 years, past, present, and future. At this point, I'll ask any member of council, because all members of council are here at the planning board meeting, to declare a conflict of interest with respect to any item on the planning board agenda. Hearing none, we'll move on to the sole item here for planning board, and the chair of planning board, Councillor Duran, will take over.
Thank you, Your Worship. Like you say, one item this evening on planning board, and it is a street name for private streets, 3 private streets. So the purpose is to name 3 private streets off Foxland Court, and that is the it's a new, currently vacant street off of the top end of McEwen Road. Background, the owner/developer, Home Plus Real Estate Limited, wish to propose street names for streets A, B, and C, see the below map, that are not on the approved street name list. The proposed names honor the fox industry. The developer plans to establish some fox statuettes and indoor theme decorations in the subdivision so as to add fox features to the whole community. The names being suggested are all related to different fox species, common names or pronunciation in other languages, which will reflect cultural mixing and diversity. The developer has provided supporting information regarding the names being proposed, and those are attached to the report. The process noted below in section 2A, street naming, for choosing a street name that is not on the approved street name list shall make application to council. And that is section 2, street naming. Any person who wishes to use a name that is not on the approved street name list shall make application to council, therefore, and council shall approve or deny the application by simple resolution, based on 1, the recommendation of the street naming committee, 2, the conformance of the proposed name with this policy, and 3, any other considerations that council considers relevant. The proposed street names for the private streets, which are not on the approved street name list, are as follows. For street A would be Wowquis, which is a Mi'kmaq First Nations word for red fox, or Alopex, from the ancient Greek word for fox. Street B, Zorro, which is the Latin American Spanish name for fox, and street C, Vulp or Vulpe, the Romanian name for fox. The developer also proposed another option for each street name for consideration, and these are as follows. Street A would be Renard, French for fox, B, Raposa, the Portuguese word for fox, and street C, Lisica, from Croatian word for fox. Report, as required under the Emergency 911 Act, the city is a designated municipality and is responsible for assigning civic addresses. A public road must be named if it provides access to 3 or more improved properties. As per Schedule B, the street naming policy of the Site Development and Subdivision Bylaw, any person who wishes to use a name that is not on the approved street name list shall make application to council, and council shall approve or deny by simple resolution. The Street Naming Committee review. The committee has reviewed the proposed street names. The street suffix will be street, as per the street naming policy. The proposed street names noted above conform with the street naming policy. A member of the street naming committee noted the proposed name Renard sounds similar to Bernard, which could cause confusion in the event of an emergency. While the street naming policy process does not require a review and recommendation from the planning board regarding street naming, it has been the city's practice to vet proposed street names other than those on the approved street name list to planning board for discussion. The proposed street names, Wauquist, Alopex, Zorro, Volpe, Renard, Raposa, and Lasica, are being forwarded for consideration. As per the street naming policy, council will approve or deny the names being forwarded for consideration. And then attached is just a brief outline. I believe that the developer likely submitted that just kind of has a history of what the words mean and some different breeds of fox and pictures and species and where they're from and that sort of thing. There's a couple pages there. And then Schedule B is also attached, the complete street naming policy. And both of those items are available in the meeting package online, or we can print them as well if anybody would like those. So I guess that just opens up, we have 6 options, 3 streets, so we will have to just kind of decide as a council which ones to pick. Councillor McDougall.
Thank you. I don't know what to say. Other than, I look at this and I know that the city has a naming policy and developers are allowed to submit names. When do we get to use any of the names on the list? But that's just one statement. The other statement I have is, I looked at that list of foxes and I never seen the one on there that Summerside was most famous for, and it's the silver fox, right? So I just, if we're naming it a fox, I'd rather see a silver fox on there than one of the other names. Anyway, just my thought.
I was reading through the information, and I know that there are a number of names that have been given that have been provided a way back. I guess what I'm wondering about, so would this be something that the developer has chosen to do? And are there any names that are on that list that are not something that they would want? I guess I'm just wondering about that simply because it's around history, it's around, you know, long-standing names, community meaning to people, and I'm just wondering, I realize that there is, a developer has that choice, but I'm just wondering if they have seen any of those other names and they just weren't names that they chose and they wanted to add something of their own.
The developer was provided with the street name list, the approved street name list, and chose to request to have other considerations made for these names.
And my last question on it, I noticed that in the naming, some of them are Portuguese, French, Mi'kmaq. Would we be running into any kind of a, I don't know, a question about people understanding, people who may not have English as a good language or a formal language? Would we be running into anything like that? Just wondering. I figure if you think it, you have to ask it.
I do agree somewhat with Councillor McCormick that some of the names would be a little bit harder to pronounce, but also at the same time we need representation that is a little bit broader than what we currently have in our list, and we have 2 there that are, you know, there are a lot of residents in our city who are Mi'kmaq. We've got lots of residents who are French speaking. We also do have a resolution with the French community to have more representation for them within our community, and this could be a very easy way to do something to show them that. I personally have no problem with any of the names. It does come down to pronunciation. I think that it could be a little hard for some people, especially in an emergency, to pronounce some of the names, but I would have no problem picking from this current list, especially if we were going to look at First Nations and French as potential street names as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just to confirm, even though there are, fox farming is a topic on the street name list, and there are 3 names under it, they didn't want to choose any of those 3? Okay.
Okay, Councillor Duran, so as far as I understand, this is a discussion at planning board, and then council ultimately would make a decision at the next council meeting, is that correct? Is that how the process works on this?
Yeah, there's no recommendation, I guess, form attached, but I don't, so that being said, I don't know if planning board has to vote on the name, or usually.
We had this last week, didn't we, at our last council? We had street names at our last council
did,
meeting,
yeah.
didn't we? There was voting on it, if I recall, wasn't there, for Anna?
It comes back to council.
Yeah, we had a finalized street name last meeting that we had final decision on, but I guess this initial one, planning board, and then it'll go to council again, I guess. It's kind of a weird one, because, yeah. So I don't know if planning board would put forward the 3 of choice, or do we just go right to council with all 6? Well, I guess there's 7. I guess I don't know if that's a decision of planning board to make, or we're kind of in a different scenario than we've ever been in. This isn't a typical situation. So, I mean, I'd be, as planning board, I'm more than happy to put forward or motion that we submit the proposed street names, as is. I agree with the committee where they said Renard may be a little confusing with Bernard, but that's sort of the second option that the developer proposed. So, I mean, I'd be okay with Street A, Wowquist, Street B, Zorro, Street C, Volpe, but.
So should planning board just pick the names and then come bring it forward and we approve or not approve? Same as we did for the last street name? We did 2 names last time and it came forward. I mean, I know there wasn't a choice to make, but planning board approved them and brought it forward.
I believe they're suggesting that the first 3 is the ones that they want.
Yeah, the developer also
So if you agree
proposed.
with those, takes the other ones out.
Okay, so let's just go to members of planning board then, and then we can just try and short list. It's a little difficult with 2 sets of 3 here, so it looks like there's 6 names. My only comments are to echo Councillor Cameron's, that we do have street naming list. We did have a discussion at committee of the whole a number of months ago to review that street naming list, to ensure that there were some names that were representative of our Francophone community, of which there are none, and our Mi'kmaq community, of which there are none. There are 2 here. Woquist is the red fox. If you remember, Woquist was the mascot for the recent Canada Games here in PEI. And Renard, I think is how you pronounce it, although my French pronunciation isn't very good. But perhaps planning board, we could, I guess we don't have to necessarily decide here, but we could just give a list to council, and council could yea or nay them. So if we have 3 and maybe 4 members of planning board.
Corey's there.
Corey is here?
I am here.
So I guess as chair, I will move that we move forward to council with the proposed street names, with Wowquist Street for Street A, Zorro Street for Street B, and Volpe Street for Street C.
Would that include then the French Renard? Renard?
Sure.
All right, let's just take
I'm
this
only
off,
moving
like,
it
yeah.
forward without that, based on the fact that the street naming committee thought that might be a bit confusing with Bernard, and I see it's just 1 letter off, so in an emergency, but again, it's a different kind of scenario that we're in now. It's very, so, I mean, if you want to add that, then the council can pick from those 4, and then when it comes to Street B, or Street A rather, we can decide between Renard and Wowquist. Did they, Linda or Aaron, did they have, like, Street A, did they only have, this has to be this, or this, or can Street C name be kind of changed over to Street B? Like,
I see, if you look in their attachment,
Yeah,
they actually did them in an order. Street A
Yeah.
had 3 options, Street B, it changed a little bit from the time we submitted the report.
right,
And then Street B had 2 options, Street C had 2 options.
yeah. But Street A, they have option 1, Wowquist, which is the Mi'kmaq name, and option 3, which is Renard. So if we're wanting to have both Mi'kmaq and French, we kind of have to pick one, because they both have those for the option for Street A. So I guess my question is, can we take Renard, if that is the intention or the want of council, and move that down to a Street B?
Again, it's council's choice. Again, we just wanted to make note that Renard, regardless of which way it's pronounced, may be confusing. When I mentioned it to somebody in the office, they said, well, we already have a Bernard.
Yeah, okay,
So it was just something that we picked up on.
okay. So I guess, I mean, open to do whatever. Time is kind of clicking down here, but I'll kind of reiterate that I'll, as chair, I'll move forward that we pick option 1 for each one of those streets, which is Wowquist, Zorro, and Volpe. And if it comes to council and one or more want to throw in Renard somewhere, that's fine.
Yeah, and I'll second that if you need a second here.
All right.
Need a vote? of
I don't think we
planning
need a
board?
vote on that. Nope, it was just a discussion of planning board, and then it will come to council as per the direction, and it seems to be members of planning board want to proceed that way. That sounds great. It is easier if they just put one name and say, this is the one we like or not. It's far too complicated for us. Okay, great. That was the only item on for planning board this evening. So with that, we'll adjourn our planning board meeting, and we'll move right into our committee of the whole. So I will call to order our committee of the whole Summerside City Council meeting of July 2nd, 2024, here at 5:19 p.m. I'll call for a mover for approval of the agenda as presented. Councillor Adams, second. Councillor Cameron, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed or changes? Hearing none, we'll proceed with the agenda as presented. Conflict of interest declaration. Any member of council, this is your opportunity to declare a conflict of interest with respect to any item on the agenda. Seeing none, we'll move into item 4. Item 4 is the Summerside Emergency Shelter Operations, Staffing, Safety, and Site Plan. This is a presentation from the province of PEI. I think we have Jason Doyle here representing the province. By way of quick background, the provincial government was here, I believe, in January, but don't hold me to that. You nodded your head, so I'll think that's correct. January, where council approved a restricted use application for the proposed site for an emergency shelter here in the community. Council, though, also included 3 conditions on it, and it was a subsequent approval of a security plan for the site plan for the site, and the operational plan. As I understand tonight, Jason Doyle from the province of PEI is back to provide the feedback and information that council has requested, and that's where we'll start. Jason, come on up.
Great, thank you. I do have my colleague Ann Drake here with me as well. She's the manager of housing services with our department. And I do have Mike Hamill as well here with me today. He's the emergency shelter operator at Park Street, or he's the operations manager at Park Street Emergency Shelter. So we've prepared a short slide deck here today just to follow up on the conditions that were outlined in Council's earlier approval of the emergency shelter related to the site plan, the operational staffing, and safety plan as well. And I should note we have had the opportunity to meet with the City of Summerside staff and police services over the last few weeks to kind of review our model, our site plan, and our operational plan as well. So the first slide is just a bit of a site plan for what the proposed look of the shelter operation will look like. So if you look at the site, this is off of Frank Mellis Drive, and that's identified here on the south side of the property. That is where the entrance point for the clients will be to the shelter operation. They will enter in the southwest side of the property, and they will enter into what we're calling an intake building. So that's the process for individuals will come in, do the screening process with staff and security, and go through that component of the operation, and then they will move along the process into the emergency shelter building, which will essentially be where they are provided with a warm and safe space to sleep overnight. As you can see on the site plan, the whole site will be fenced with a combination of wooden fence and chain link fence with privacy slats, just to make the site secure and safe. So the PEI Housing Corporation will be the operator of this facility in partnership with a nonprofit organization called the Equality Project. An operations manager will be hired by government to oversee the day-to-day operations and the ultimate decision-making for the shelter in consultation with senior staff of the department. The Equality Project is a relatively new organization, nonprofit organization that has a strong passion for working with complex islanders, and we are hoping that this partnership will allow that organization to grow and manage the facility. Be able to grow and kind of increase their capacity over time by assisting in the management of this operation. So the Equality Project will be responsible for hiring the supervisors and the frontline caseworkers to assist with the operation, and working with government to develop policy and procedures over the next few months, and really utilizing what we've created at the Park Street Emergency Shelter to be able to replicate exactly what we are doing at that shelter. So the two operations will be very closely mirrored. And I am going to pass it along to Anne here to provide a bit of an overview of the service itself.
Thank you, Jason. Kind of trapped up here. The service delivery model for the shelter is very similar to what is being offered at Park Street. It is warm, dry, safe space for individuals who are currently experiencing homelessness. It is low barrier, so individuals can access the service if they are under the influence of substances. There is no substance use on property. There is a safety focus in the service delivery model to ensure that staff and clients utilizing the service are safe through the night. This would include intake procedures that would incorporate a safety screening assessment, observation if individuals appear not to be doing well, training to be able to contact EMS, things of that nature. And it's an emergency shelter service. So an emergency shelter is not housing. It's an overnight service to provide individuals with an opportunity to get connected to other services through case management and referral, as well as an opportunity to shelter safely, as opposed to sleeping rough, couch surfing. The overview of the service, it's a 10-bed service with one complex being utilized, 10 rooms with one bed in each room, and there's one accessible room for individuals that may have mobility or disability-related needs. The population groups it's gender inclusive. Couples, individuals with pets, and it's adults only. So anyone under the age of 18 is not able to utilize this service. The hours of operation are 5 p.m. till 8 a.m., 7 days a week. The services that will be provided on site during this time will be, as I mentioned in a previous slide, access to case management and referral services, laundry facilities, safe storage of belongings, taxi vouchers if they're needed to or from the shelter, and it is a 30-night bed booking model. So that means an individual, if they so choose, can reserve a bed for 30 nights. They don't have to keep calling the shelter support line or the shelter itself to book in every single night. They can know that they have a place where they can stay for 30 nights to be able to work on some of the barriers that are keeping them from accessing appropriate housing.
So in terms of staffing for the shelter, approximately 9 employees will be required to operate the shelter. One operations manager that I referenced earlier, that will be a government employee managing the operations in the day-to-day. There will be 2 supervisors needed for the shelter, and approximately six caseworkers to cover off the hours of operation. There's a significant amount of training that we'll be looking for staff, to name a few, looking at mental health first aid, trauma-informed care, nonviolent crisis intervention. So we will undertake a staffing training activity between now and the time of opening to make sure that every staff member that is hired are adequately qualified to operate the shelter or be workers at the shelter. So some of this side is just basically a little bit of observations or learnings of what we've learned at Park Street over the last year and a half. Really a focus to work cooperatively and with our community partners and the public to make sure that everyone has a good understanding and has a good transparent and communication pathway to the shelter to make sure everything is handled in a timely manner if there happens to be issues that arise. Alignment with police services. We feel that we have a strong relationship with police services in Summerside, and that will be crucial and critical to the success of the shelter. We've certainly noticed, and it's clearly obvious that there's a lot of complex issues on the clients that are going to the Park Street Emergency Shelter, and recognizing that these individuals are facing significant challenges, and trying to provide them with pathways to access services is really the end goal here, the ultimate goal, to be able to get these people properly housed. Data collection is huge, so we will be working with police services and our team to make sure that we have strong data collection, so we really have a good understanding of the population group within the Summerside area that is utilizing the shelter, and making sure that this information is entered into our HIFIS system to really create a positive and accurate picture of what we are experiencing in Summerside. One of the biggest, one of the most important things that clients have at the Park Street Emergency Shelter is the ability to store belongings. So we will have the same in Summerside, where they will have an ability to store their belongings, so they don't have to. So they have a better and more efficient way of storing their items. In terms of the security plan. We referenced it, I think, back in January, but the plan would be to have security on site 24 hours a day, so there would always be somebody on the site. Camera surveillance, so we'll have cameras inside the complex and outside the complex to make sure that we are able to see any issues that arise, and those cameras will be monitored in real time. So and have an ability to really react quickly if issues do arise. Security will be responsible for on-site, but they will also do patrols of the neighborhood as well, the surrounding neighborhood, to make sure that if there happens to be any issues, that they can identify them and call police services if needed. Just another way of being able to deal with issues in a timely manner. Like I mentioned earlier, we did have an opportunity to sit down with police services a week or two ago, and we believe strong collaboration with police services is important for this operation, and we feel like we do have a good relationship at this time, and we will continue to build on that, both from being able to call perspective, but also making sure that we have accurate data and good data to support decision making. Operations managers' contact information will be provided to residents and businesses in the area. So if there happens to be an issue that arises, that will be the first point of contact for individuals to make sure that it's dealt with in a timely manner. And that's something similar that we did at Park Street as well, to try to avoid any lingering problems and really make sure things are tackled in a timely manner. And that is it.
Thank you, Jason, and hi, Ann. Nice to have you here as well. Ann, thank you for both of you. At this point, I'll open the floor to members of council for questions. We'll start with Councillor Duran and then go to, is your lights on? Do you want to talk? Yep. And then to Councillor Adams.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Jason and Ann. I just had one question that just came to me as you were going through the presentation, and that is just more of a curiosity. The 30-night reservation sort of plan, if someone doesn't show up for a certain night, do they keep the rest of their days, or does it do they lose it, or is it after 2 nights they lose it? Like, do they have to show up every night of those 30 in order to kind of keep their slot?
Yes, thanks for asking that. I should have clarified. With the 30-night booking, if an individual is unable to show up for their reserved bed, they can. It kind of depends on their situation. Some individuals may be accessing treatment. They may be staying with family. They may be working on a reunification plan with a loved one. And so if shelter staff are aware, then what they can do is, if the demand is there, they can book somebody in to that bed and for that one night. And then the next night, if the individual had planned to come back, they can have their room back. The rooms, the way that it's set up in Park Street, and Mike Hamill, the operations manager, is here if you had more detailed questions on the operations of Park Street. Individuals don't leave personal items in the room. It operates as an overnight shelter. So they can bring a few items in the room for the evening, and then when they leave the room, they take their items with them. So clients do understand that if a bed is not being utilized, the demand is significant, so that it is used again. And I will note that after the 30 days, an individual is able to book for another 30 days. Depending on what their plans are, they may not have housing at the end of 30 days. We do have individuals that have utilized the Park Street shelter services for an extended period of time, unfortunately. And that is something that if they want to book that in, they can. But we try not to leave any beds vacant. The demand typically is such that we need to get the heads in beds.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that was the answer that I was hoping to hear. And I guess my only follow-up would be if someone gets to their 30th day and they decide they want to extend that, is there like a waiting list that you would get to after they're no longer interested in rebooking, or how would that work?
The hope would be that we wouldn't have a wait list. Depending on the nature of an individual situation, some folks find it very difficult to shelter. They have, for a variety of reasons, preferred to sleep rough. And so if staff are able to connect with an individual and encourage and support them to shelter safely at the shelter overnight, we do try and work with the individuals each night on plans through the day with other support services. So yeah, the intent would be to be able to continue that on. And if there are individuals that are looking for a shelter bed and a bed's not available, we work with the shelter support line with some of the other shelters if there are openings for individuals to go there. But hopefully we won't have that. But it could happen.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you, Jason and Ann. I have 4 questions. And also, I was wondering if also, in addition to my 4 questions, we could hear from Deputy Chief Blackyear. I think it'd be good for the residents probably just to get a debrief from Deputy Chief. Okay, so my first one is the Equality Project you had mentioned. What other projects are they doing on the island currently?
This would be one of the first projects that they really take on. They do some other support group work in the east area, but this would certainly be a project, one of the first projects that would be major for them, and that's exactly why we chose to step in and hire that operations manager and use them to assist in the operations in hopes that they're able to build capacity for potentially future projects.
Right, so the operations manager, which is Mike, would assist the Equality Project individuals.
That is correct. Mike is not the operations manager for Summerside. He's
Okay.
only the operations manager for Park
You're going
Street.
to hire an operations
There will be a operations manager hired for Summerside specifically.
Okay. And there's only 2 people? Online it says the Equality Project is just 2 people?
They do have a board of directors. I don't know if their online profile is updated. They have a board of directors that's comprised of 5 or 6 people. Their president is Mike Redmond, and they have a few other staff members that are very experienced in the industry that will likely be involved in this project.
Yeah, online it only has Mike and Wayne, so just,
Yeah.
I know people, once the name is out there, people will likely be looking, so,
Yep, sure.
you know, maybe you could suggest they update that, then at least people will know that it's not just those 2 people. The other things I had was, you had mentioned the staff in one of your slides, but there was no mention of cleaners or maintenance for the inside or outside.
So the Housing Corporation has their own maintenance and cleaning staff that would be responsible for the day-to-day cleaning and maintenance of the facility.
Okay, perfect. And you had mentioned security. Is that like an external security company that's hired, or is that also like a PI Housing Corporation?
That would be an external security company.
Okay.
Yep.
And that is all the time?
24/7, correct, yep.
Even after 8 a.m. and before 5 p.m., there's security?
Yes, security will always be on site.
Okay. And my last one is fire codes and so on, sprinklers and that. Will that all be up, functioning, working, inspected, passed, all that before the doors open for people to stay there?
Yes, absolutely. We'll be following the city's requirements on being able to make sure that everything's adhered to before we receive our occupancy permit. The units themselves are sprinklered, so there's a sprinkler system within the complex.
Perfect. And yeah, other than that, I'd like to hear from Deputy Chief at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason and Ann. I think all my questions have been answered, but I have a couple more. I noticed that you said you will hire, so nobody's been hired yet? Or
No, the operations manager has not been hired yet, but we'll be actively searching, hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. The other thing, the intake shelter, is that manned all day, or is that just in the evenings, or how is that operated?
The intake building?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it will be operational while individuals are entering the shelter. During the day, when there's nobody there, there's the security personnel will either be in that building or the shelter building, monitoring the camera system.
So you said there's 9 total, including the manager?
Yes.
So how many people will be working there, staff and security people, each day? Because I know they can't all work every day, all the time.
Yeah, so it's a 2-person system, so it's 2 staff members on at all times from the caseworker perspective, and then there will be a supervisor on at each shift, and then 2 security personnel on each shift. So 5 people in total per shift.
Okay, and again, I guess the 30-night thing, I think you pretty well answered that if somebody is there for 30 nights and they come down to the last couple of nights, you don't give that one away until they're, okay. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Right. I first want to say thank you guys, because I feel like you really listened to what we said in January or whenever it was about security and fencing. I think that really helps people be a little bit more at ease. One thing I am wondering though is, because it's a low barrier shelter and people can use once they leave the shelter, is there any plans, and this maybe is more police services, I'm not sure, is there plans on how to keep the surrounding area clean and not full of debris from people using? Is that something that you guys have already tackled, or is that something that is kind of, you go with the flow, you have to figure it out as it goes on? I'm just wondering about that.
Yeah, I think that our security personnel will certainly work with our operations manager and our connection with the police services to try and move people along that are potentially loitering in the area, causing issues. So that will be certainly a collaborative approach to work with police services on that. Our team that will be involved in the shelter operation will work very hard to try and keep the area clean, but it certainly does become an issue and something that we have to monitor regularly.
Just a couple more things, because some things were answered along the way. Why is there only one accessible unit? Why aren't they all, I mean, if we're going in, we're building this, why aren't they all just accessible? I know it probably costs more money to do that, but the reality is that you probably would have more than one person who needs an accessible unit, and I'm just wondering why the limitation on one.
So I think, just to clarify, there's really, the whole building does have accessible features. There's one fully accessible unit. So in the event that there may be a need for more accessible units, or more units that have accessibility features, we do feel like we would certainly be able to manage that. I think from what we see at Park Street as well, we have one accessible unit in each of our modular complexes, so 2 in total. So I think we do see that number does appear to be sufficient in Charlottetown, but like I said, the building itself, we are set up quite well in terms of having accessible features that we should be able to assist individuals that may have mobility problems, but there is that only one fully accessible unit.
And then my last question is, there was mention of a laundry facility, which is great, but no mention of any type of shower facilities for people. I feel like that's one of the biggest things that we as councillors here in Summerside is that people don't have access to showers for personal hygiene. And I'm wondering, is that something that could be a consideration to put in? Maybe not right away, eventually, but I mean, that is something that I think is a basic need that people have. I mean, it's great to wash your clothes, but for hygienic purposes, it's much better to wash yourself. And I'm just wondering if that's something that the province would consider.
Yeah, that may have been an oversight in the slide deck. There are shower facilities in the complex.
And that's all I have. So thank you guys so much.
Councillor Duran and then Councillor Coleman. Oh, okay, and then we'll go to Deputy Snow after.
Just looking at the sort of the top-down plan view, I was just wondering if a client was to show up during the day when there's shelter isn't running, just wondering, like, are they met with just the locked gates, or is there signage, or is there somewhere in the facility to kind of sit and wait, or is it just somebody kind of relying on the security person to tell them when they can come back? Or just kind of wondering how that works if someone arrives through the day when they might not know about the hours right after.
Yeah, so our operations manager will be on site during the day, and they will be able to kind of navigate that situation. It might be the possibility of providing a taxi voucher to connect that individual with some of the services in the downtown, something like that. But that would be something our operations manager would navigate.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you to you both, Jason and Ann. I think you've really covered the information very well. And all of the questions, I think we had them answered, so thank you. I just have one that I'm just not really sure of, and if you don't mind, you had mentioned that residents will be given operational managers' contact info. How have you found that has worked with the residents as far as getting that information? Has it been very seamless communication?
Thanks very much for the question, because there was something that we neglected to really expand on in the slides around that component of communicating with residents and businesses and how we view being a good neighbor. We have found when we started the operations at Park Street, we started with the operations manager handing out information, meeting with businesses, local residents. Prior to the opening, we had an open house so people could see what that service was and have an understanding of what we were trying to achieve within the community. We found that to be quite successful. We've expanded that in the Charlottetown area, and we're hoping to take our learnings from that and expand that a little bit to include collaboration with police services, our housing navigator, our operations manager, to be able to do some regular check-ins with our neighboring community members as well as businesses prior to even a reach out with an issue. Just as a we call them little walkabouts, do a bit of a door knock, everything going okay? Are you seeing anything? Is there anything we can improve on? Just to ensure that we have an open door of communication. That piece on how that would be operationalized for Summerside isn't all worked out, but that is the intent. So we may start with the operations manager, but then expand to add a few more. We do have a housing navigator now that services Charlottetown and Summerside, so we do have the opportunity to have that bit more of a focus to be able to support the unhoused individuals in the area, and that seems to work well. But yeah, we're always open to suggestions on what would work for Summerside specifically. We can take our learnings from other areas.
Sure. Yeah.
But each community is unique, and there could be an opportunity to have a different spin on it that would suit better.
Okay, so I think you already asked my final question or point. It was, do you see any differences in operating this shelter compared to Park Street based on some realistic things that have happened? And it sounds like you're going to do a bit more contact with the residents and building that goodwill and trust so that if they have any concerns or questions, they can go to the operational manager, but also have that walkabout with meeting them.
Yeah, I think that has really worked to improve the communication, as well as dispelling some of the myths that may exist in our communities with regards to some of the individuals that may utilize the service. But I think that what's important is that we're not looking at, this worked in Charlottetown, so it's going to work everywhere. We've had an opportunity to connect with individuals down east in the Montague-Surrey area, and what would work for supports and services there may not work in Summerside or Charlottetown.
Yeah.
And so I think it is important that we kind of build on what we think works and be open to adjusting in the event that we learn that it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think you've really covered a lot. Thanks.
We'll go to Councillor Snow.
Thank you, Your Worship. Hopefully everybody can hear me fine. First, my sincere apologies for not being there in person. This is obviously a very important topic for our city, the residents in the area, and those individuals that are needing this service. Unfortunately, out of the province in a family emergency, and believe me, I'd much rather be sitting there with you all right now than doing a couple questions. I have heard nothing but good things about Mr. Hamill and his work in Charlottetown with the shelter there. That being said, I have a little bit of concern with the possible new not-for-profit, not knowing their capabilities and what they're capable of. I would hate for us to get into a poor situation right off the bat. So that concerns me a little bit. I know or hope that there'll be some continued oversight with Mike and his team in Charlottetown and other individuals to make sure that the transition is smooth. But without having that experience, that concerns me a little bit. So one question I have is, currently in Charlottetown, is there a not-for-profit involved with that facility down there, or is that just run solely by the province and their staff?
Thank you. I first of all, I guess the Park Street Emergency Shelter is operated by government, so government staff operate that facility. That being said, there is a large amount of collaboration with the community partners in the area, so definitely a collaborative approach in that sense, but ultimately the staff of the shelter is government employees. Just one thing, I guess, to note, it's not necessarily from the Summerside Emergency Shelter's perspective, I wouldn't qualify it as just oversight. It is like the day-to-day responsibilities of the shelter will be the responsibility of government. Really with engaging this community partner organization to assist essentially in the operations, and really in an effort to try and build capacity in that organization to potentially take on projects in the future. We know that the individuals that have been identified in their proposal have a large amount of experience in the industry and in the nonprofit world, specifically working with the more complex islanders. The organization itself is very new and hasn't had an opportunity to manage a facility of this nature yet, and that is exactly the reason why government has made the decision to really operate the shelter with the assistance of the nonprofit organization.
Yeah, so that that continues, I guess, with my concern, because I think, and I hope, listen, I want nothing but success, and I support us figuring out this path forward and making sure these services are available, preferably a long time ago. But that being said, I am concerned that not-for-profit with little experience is involved to try to gain capacity. I just don't want this to end up on the wrong foot. I think we've seen that previously in our sister city, and I just don't want that to be what happens here. I think it's too valuable to make those decisions and risk that happening. I just would plead that we make sure that there is continued oversight and capacity building until the capacity is there fully in order to run the facility properly. And I guess that's just a statement more than anything. Back to Councillor Cameron's comments earlier, he mentioned the shower facilities. I don't know if he was referencing this and what you were referencing when you had said that it was an oversight that shower facilities are available. But are the shower facilities going to be available for other individuals other than those just using the facility during those days? I think what Councillor Cameron was referencing was that we get a lot of requests, rightfully so, from individuals working with the homeless population within the city of Summerside regarding our shower facilities. So wanting to access shower facilities at certain areas of the city, and we do our best to accommodate or try to make things work, but it doesn't always jive. And if we have a facility like this that is set up and there's shower facilities available, is it possible to make sure that those needing shower facilities, maybe during the periods of time that are not open to those individuals that are actually in the facility using it currently, that they could then access the facilities as well for those services?
So the facility itself, the shower facilities within the complex, would only really be accessible by the individual staying in the building. Having said that, I think happy to have conversation and engage with the city on that issue. I am familiar with that, so I think we'd be certainly more than happy to investigate that as a possibility. Can't say really for certain today, but certainly happy to engage with the city on that issue.
Okay, thank you. I would, again, that would be something that I would strongly encourage, because if we have a limit on individuals being able to access the facility, to Councillor Cameron's point, the ability to just access basic services of having a clean shower, getting yourself freshened up, maybe do a load of laundry, whatever, goes a long way in moving people ahead in their day-to-day life. The last question I would have just goes around the surrounding properties. I think everybody knows residents around the areas are mostly seniors, and they would have some concerns, and rightfully so. Just the unknown, right? I'm not saying that they're correct in every one of their concerns, but it is concerning, the unknown. So how are we making sure, I know there's fences being put up, you said there's security, is there going to be additional observation and policing and security around the property, people moving as before they check in during the day, so they're not so the residents in the area have some faith and some just security and knowing that they're taken care of. That I think that's a number one concern for us, is the residents in those areas that most of them or all of them are elderly and have, lived great lives, and you just don't want to make sure they're living with fear or any concerns as they continue to age. So I would like to make sure that we're doing everything absolutely possible to make sure that they feel as safe and secure as possible. Everybody should in their home. So that would be my last question, comment.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely 100% valid question or comment. Like I mentioned earlier, we are going to be, the property itself will be surrounded and enclosed with a fence. We will have camera surveillance inside and outside of the complex. Security is going to be on site 24/7. We're going to have the operations manager on site during the day. We'll have an active channel of communication with the police services. I think that's absolutely very critical to the success of the operation, both from the operation itself, but also the surrounding area and the neighbors. So we're going to really work hard on trying to be a good neighbor. We're going to be holding open houses, walks around the community, try and just make sure that everybody feels as comfortable as possible.
Can I just, one more question or comment? The employees or staff that are going to be working there, not being government employees, being a former, I think I'm still a current, I'm currently on leave from a government position, but as a government employee or a former government employee, however you want to put it, if they are not government employees, are the training aspects, the qualifications for, and that goes back to my first question or staffing and their ability to manage or do the work required. I assume there's still going to be staffing requirements, obviously, but then again, my concern would be in the current makeup of employees and trying to find staff. If we're not a government run facility, I would think the wages are going to be less than those in government run facilities. And then are we having a cycle of employees coming in and out and not being trained and being qualified?
I kind of only caught some of that question, but I think from a training perspective, we work with all of our nonprofit organizations and community partners really on developing a standardized approach to training for staff in those facilities, and we don't see that any different than what we're proposing here with the Equality Project. So there is required staff training that is needed. We're going to be undertaking the search for employees kind of immediately after receiving authorization to proceed, to make sure that we have enough time to hire qualified staff and provide the appropriate training for those individuals. So I mean, I think that was kind of the basis of the question, but if I missed anything, definitely let me know.
Yeah, that was basically the basis. I might, and again, I'm sorry if I'm cutting in and out, but it was mainly around having qualified staff and whether or not being a government-run facility with government salaries, wages, if that's going to affect getting qualified staff, basically, and holding on to them.
Yeah, fair enough. I think from a wage rate perspective, the wage rates would be certainly comparable to the nonprofit sector, that the wage rates that's paid in other nonprofit organizations. I can't speak to the exact information on how it compares to government wage rates, but ultimately the wage rates that are kind of proposed within our budget of the operation would be competitive within those of the nonprofit sector.
I would, excuse me, I would like to add too, that we have the opportunity to work with our community partners that currently provide shelter services across the island. And I can say that we do joint training events. Staffing's challenging for all organizations. This particular sector, is one that is emerging within our province over the last few years. So trained staff it's a challenge, but I feel very confident that the community partners that we work with have excellent staff, and they've been able to recruit, retain, train some really great people, and the intent would be the Summerside shelter would be no different. And I do want to reiterate that it is not merely oversight, the government involvement. Here tonight with myself, Jason, and Mike, this is just part of the team that will be working with the operations manager and the Equality Project to be able to create and deliver services at the Summerside shelter. So it's not a case of we're coming in and then we go out. We're there on a regular basis, and we work as a team around the services, around the policies, staffing, and we often work collaboratively with our other community partners as well that deliver different types of services, including shelters. So we are familiar with some of the needs, but just wanted to reassure folks that it's not we're just dropping in and dropping out.
Councillor Adams?
Thank you, Worship. Okay, just as everybody kept talking, it prompted more questions. Okay, so has a tender, I believe the tender has been already awarded to build this?
Yes, it has.
Okay. And where are you with the operations manager hiring process? Like, what stage are we at in that?
Right now, we've identified some individuals that we were going to reach out to, but as of right now, we're expecting it would probably be 2 to 3 weeks before we would have that person in place.
So it wasn't a competition, like it wasn't advertised?
It hasn't been advertised, no. We expect that what we are planning to do is seek a qualified individual that has a significant amount of experience in this industry and nonprofit world to be able to manage the operation.
I guess that part sort of concerns me, and I go back to why aren't we being government run if Charlottetown is being government run? Why isn't there a proper hiring process? We could have somebody from out of the province who has tons more experience than anybody in the province. And if it doesn't go through a proper hiring process, how do we know we're getting the best person if we're just word of mouth asking people?
Valid point for sure. I think we do have a strong understanding of what is required in a person to operate this facility. We're going to be really looking hard at individuals that may really be a good fit and qualified and has really worked in this industry with complex people in the past. I recognize certainly your concerns. However, we're comfortable with the approach we took in terms of really being able to target some individuals that would fit. And I don't know exactly what the relationship is going to be. It could certainly be an individual that's taken over on a secondment from another department within government. So certainly could be possible.
And you had mentioned the fencing and so on. The tender to award is the fencing and so on in with that, or is it totally separate?
That would be included in the tender that's been awarded.
So this fencing and the security will be in place. It's not going to be the structure there for a time and then the fencing worked on. It's going to be secure before it opens.
Correct, yep.
Okay. And I guess Councillor Snow had sort of you know, alluded to it a bit, but obviously clear criminal background checks for employees of the Equality Project would that be something you guys would be checking up on, or would you leave it to the Equality Project people to ensure that's done?
That would absolutely be a requirement, and it is a requirement in our contracts that we have with nonprofit groups. We're going to be working collaboratively with the Equality Project on the whole staffing process, so we'll be very much involved in that piece of it.
Okay. And my last question is, why aren't we being government run? Why is this gone out to a not-for-profit? If Charlottetown is being government run, why aren't we being government run?
Well, I think from Charlottetown's perspective, we had a very dangerous situation. I'm not saying it's any less dangerous than Summerside, but we really needed to act quickly, and that's essentially why we chose to do things quicker, more quickly, and proceeded with a government-owned facility. Ultimately, we hope in the future, by building on the nonprofit sector, that we're able to transfer that over to a nonprofit. We really feel, and if you see in other jurisdictions and other provinces, it's really the nonprofit sector that has really taken and worked with this target population most effectively, and we're hoping that by bringing in more nonprofit organizations, we can really, like I mentioned earlier, build capacity and really put them in a better position to be successful. And ultimately, that's kind of the path we've chosen.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for all your information. Just one or two little questions. If you get the go-ahead, or this, let's say the 1st of August, it's all set to go, what would be the timeline for an opening?
Tough to say. I mean, I hope before the 1st of August we could get started. We have the contractors ready to go as soon as tomorrow, kind of thing, if we were able to get the green light in our building permit application approved. At this time, the schedule would have us into the early part of October.
So before it gets too cold would be the plan.
Correct, yeah.
And just out of curiosity, it doesn't really make a lot of difference, but so when the clients come in at 5 and leave at 8, are they fed, or is there any nutrition, or they're?
Yep, food would be part of our operation. Nothing super elaborate, but definitely some basic food for clients.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I just, I know that this meeting here this evening, we have to vote on it, but I know we have some people in the audience, and I would be asking if, if any of those residents would be allowed to talk if they have something that hasn't been answered already here this evening. They're not being represented by a councillor now, so I think it would be only fair before we voted on this. And yeah, and the chief too, please, before we did any voting, so.
Certainly would be willing to support that if we could.
Yeah, certainly. The way that works is if any member of the public wants to address council, you come up to the microphone, state your name and address. Where it isn't a regularly scheduled, where the process isn't normally to have members of public provide comment, it goes to a vote of council, then to approve or to deny the member of the public to provide statement or comment, and then I, as chair, have the option to put a time limit on it, but I don't anticipate that would be an issue here this evening. So that would be one. So if any member of the public does have that, certainly feel free at any time to step up to the microphone, and we'll proceed in that regard. And then the second would be if any member of council has a question for the Deputy Chief of Police. I think that certainly can be asked to the deputy at any time.
Thank you.
Yep, come on up.
My name's Anne Marie Sage, and I live on Roy Boats Avenue.
And so I'm just, before you start, just so we do the right process, I'm just gonna ask council, if council approves, having Anne speak to council. Council's okay with that? Okay, and I think council, maybe I'll put a blanket resolution if any member of public who's here tonight wants to speak to the issues. Council okay with having that? Okay, great. Go ahead. Sorry, I
Thank
just
you.
want to make sure we
Okay.
didn't get in trouble with our procedures.
Okay. My question is, how do you prioritize the residents that are going to be coming into the shelter?
I think our hope would be that all residents in the nearby community would have the opportunity to come and tour the shelter for an open house, receive the information that we kind of have to offer, provide them with contact information. So ultimately, our hope would be that all residents in kind of that surrounding area would be talked to, either through attending the open house or through our walkabouts to the community, with potentially the police services, our housing navigator, and those types of scenarios.
Just to follow up on that, I think part of the question was for the clients. How do the clients as well come to get on the roster or the list, or how does that process work?
Sure. It is typically a first come, first serve. So individuals will contact our 1-800 number, our shelter support line, to be able to book a bed for that night, or they could contact the shelter directly. The operations manager would be in contact with the shelter support line. There's usually 2, maybe 3 times through the day to update the availability, but it is first come, first serve.
Any other questions from council or members of the public? I'll just take a couple of quick notes. I'm not going to be very long here, but first, there is a petition there that was submitted a number of months ago that is in the meeting package. So I just want to make sure that petition we do not support the proposed location of Frank Miller Street for the homeless shelter is on the record. And the second overall point here is, while it's certainly clear that the provincial government is responsible for providing and operating, and however the provincial government decides to do that, emergency shelters, it's not our role. Our role as council is really limited to land use, but I think council has done an excellent job in putting some additional requirements on this process, and one of the things that by doing that, it really requires us as a city as well to work with the province as well as any partner in the community. This is certainly an issue that is new to Summerside to a certain degree, particularly with the at least in a lot of the homelessness that we are seeing today, and whether living rough or unhoused or homeless or vulnerable populations, whatever the terms you want to use, are historically had been only in basements or families separated from one couch to another. We are seeing more and more people living unhoused in tents, in sheds across our city, whether it's downtown or in Memorial Park or in the woods behind a variety of different neighborhoods. All of those pose significant issues and concerns for us as a broad community, both from an emergency services or fire risk, but as well for the risk for those individuals and those folks living in the immediate vicinity. I think just overall, it is always our nature and our tendency to go to the worst case scenario. I certainly try always to go to the best case scenario, and to think that by working together and finding solutions, there are opportunities for us to do better and to create an impact to try and better people's lives, not just those individuals who are unhoused, but also ensuring that the rest of our community who is dealing with that situation also have rights, and want to make sure that our streets are safe and our parks are safe, and our residents, whether they're on Nancy Guptill Drive or on Memorial Park or anywhere in our city, feel safe and secure as best they can, given the resources that we have and the situation that we're in. Last, I have a couple of very, very short questions. One, the Winter Street Shelter here in downtown Summerside, the number of beds at the Winter Street Shelter, do you know that offhand?
10.
That's 10, so that's the same size. And the number of beds at the Park Street shelter
There's 50 beds.
is 50. So just from a scope and a size and a number, I always think if we had 50 people, we probably have close to 50 people in here. I have to think if we're in a room of 50 people, it can be quite a crowd. 10 isn't as much, but I want to make sure that, I know it does say in the package that there is the possibility to increase up to 25. I just sort of leave this with council. Council may want to ensure that it stays to 10 unless there is some correspondence with the city. So I guess I would ask you that if there was a need for overage, let's say there's another hurricane or something like that, and we need to find spaces and places for people in a real emergency situation, would you then reach out to the city and ask the city if it was appropriate to increase the number of beds for a short period of time in that situation?
Absolutely. I think, yeah, if that situation does pop up, and it certainly does from time to time, we would be reaching out to the city potentially to see if we could look at modifying our existing approval or offering to see if we can add some more spaces, potential for staying open longer if that's potentially needed. So absolutely, we would be kind of keeping that open channel of communication with your staff to achieve that if needed.
Great. And then the other question I had here is all around the safety and security. And when I was up to speak with a number of the residents a number of months ago, that was obviously issue number one. And the two buildings, I think, are the most in the immediate proximity, or at least the closest. A couple of things. One, there was a discussion, and I forget about it, what the discussion was, but there was a discussion about access to in and out of those buildings. So I'd just ask you to work with, and I think it's the Department of Seniors, perhaps, who operates those buildings. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe it's you. I'm not whoever it is in the provincial government, to ensure that access and security to those buildings is adequate for those residents, particularly as there's a heightened level of concern. The second would be potentially to just even post the phone number and the contact information for the 24-hour security. One of the things that we really try and impress upon all of our residents, if they're on Nancy Guptill Drive or if they're anywhere in the city, is that where there are situations where residents are concerned, is to contact the police, and in this case, if there's something that would be directly associated with the shelter, to contact the security service. And it was helpful to see that security is not limited to the interior of the fencing space, because no question that is the surrounding area is a concern. The other is to potentially work with the city to put up some no loitering signage and that type of stuff. It doesn't always work, to be honest, but it's a step forward. And then the other one, just for council, just to echo some of the comments we heard here from council with respect to Equality Project and operators. And I'm not going to tell. I have to be able to trust that the provincial government chooses appropriate operators in order to do what that you need to be able to do. But it is possible, I think, for council to look at having the restricted use be conditional for up to 12 months, so that we could come back next July, whether it's of 2025, and ensure that things are operating as expected, in order to ensure that council still, as a city, we still have some opportunity to have some influence going forward in case concerns do spiral out of control or something happens and we are sort of left hanging. So I just sort of leave that with council if that's something that may want to explore in terms of having basically a 12-month review for next year as of this date. Those are all of my comments. Councillor McDougall?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I was just, thank you for that 12-month thing. I was wondering if there was a timeline for a review or whatever, but so you say the management is going to be there within the next couple of months, or the operations manager? I guess why I'm asking that is I thought everything was supposed to be done when we come in here tonight, right? So I'm sort of, I know when Carrie had brought it up, kind of made me thought that But anyway, I'll let you answer.
So our expectation would be that the operations manager will be on board with government likely within the next few weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. So that's our hope and our game plan.
Okay. And the other part is I'd just like to hear if our police department had any concerns.
Yeah, you could come up, Deputy, so yeah, I guess that's a general question from
Yeah,
Councillor McDougall.
just a general question, any, whether,
Concerns around the shelter itself, or around the proposed operations, or all of that? Okay. So I guess just quickly, just a little bit of history from the police perspective. When we first started talking about shelters, it kind of predates even the Winter Street shelter, and our concern around the needs for these types of services in the city were more around the safety and well-being of the unhoused population, particularly during the cold weather months, and we felt that it was really only a matter of time until we started to see the worst case scenarios play out. So that's kind of where those conversations started with the police service, and getting to where we are today through the different meetings and discussions. A number of months ago, myself and Deputy CAO had the opportunity to tour the Park Street shelter with Mr. Hamill, and had an extensive Q&A session with him after that tour, and we came away being relatively impressed with the operation itself, the facility and how it's run. And on the drive back, we discussed it and agreed that if we could have a carbon copy of that here with our facility, we would probably be at ease with the operation and the service. It's unfortunate that we're at in that place where our community does need that service, but I think the reality is that we do, and there's a significant need. The unhoused population continues to grow, and there's really no end in sight from our perspective here right now. So there needs to be some safe spaces, and but again, from our perspective as well, we need to balance that need with the safety and security of the people and businesses in the area, and that's important to us as well. So we did have some concerns in that area. So we did meet with Mr. Doyle and the team that's here now last week. We're given assurances, basically the same presentation that you had here this evening, but we're given assurances so that there would be open lines of communication between the police service, city staff, the community really as a whole, and that also that any issues that come up along the way would be dealt with quickly, and so to everybody's satisfaction. So that being said, we're from the police service perspective, we're in a comfortable place. But I think to say that we do expect probably some bumps in the road that will come up from time to time, but with the assurances that we have from Mr. Doyle and his team that they'll be worked out and addressed, I think we're comfortable with where we are.
great, thanks a lot, that's great information, thanks.
Thank you. I think the answer is clear, but I'd just like to hear it from you. With this up and running fully, do you feel that at least during the nighttime hours that your police resources will be not as tied up?
No.
No.
I think there'll be a different need, maybe in a different area of the city.
I guess that's what I mean.
Might be the best way to put it.
Yeah.
But I think there's going to be an additional draw on our current resources as well with the shelter operating. As I said earlier, the feeling of residents in that area of being safe and secure in their homes and their surroundings is very important. And regardless of what statistics say, if people don't feel safe, they're not safe. You can tell them they are all you want, but if they don't actually feel safe, then they're not. So one of the ways the police service tries to address those situations is by having a consistent physical presence in any one area to try and alleviate some of those concerns. So that would certainly be an objective of ours moving forward as the shelter opens, would be to have an increased and consistent physical presence in that area, which, as I said, is going to be an additional draw on our resources.
Can you guys hear me? with Jason, with Blackear's comment right there, currently in Charlottetown, is there any police resources or other significant funding from the province towards the city of Charlottetown?
Was that to me, or was that to?
To whoever wants to, if it's the shelter folks, if it's you, Jason, whoever, is there any, due to the Park Street shelter being operational, does the city of Charlottetown Police Services receive additional police funding?
They do, and Mr. Doyle might have the exact numbers of positions.
Yes, there is some additional funding from government that goes towards police officers that work directly in the area of influence. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but there is some additional resources for sure.
I think it's four. I think it's four full-time positions, but I stand to be corrected on that.
So my next follow-up question, is there any additional police resources being allocated to the city of Summerside?
Not from my perspective. I would say that based on what we've presented today, it does not include any additional funding from government for police services.
So my deputy chief of police just told me as a counselor that because the facility will be up and operational, that there will be more requirements, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, but due to the nature of what will be happening in that area to keep residents feeling safe and secure, which is our and probably the government's main, or one of the main issues. We'll be trying to keep them feeling safe and secure. Is there a reason why that is a pretty obvious oversight, that we would not be saying that, you know, we opened a shelter in Charlottetown, they need 4 officers, and I'm just quoting numbers, if it's not right, it doesn't really matter, but just they require 4 officers, there's 50 beds, we're opening a shelter with 10 beds. One would think immediately that equals 1 officer, or just about 1 officer, so is there a reason why that would not have been included in the proposal?
I guess from my perspective, the proposal that we put forward really has a focus on providing a strong security presence in the area. I'm not necessarily, I guess it will probably take a little bit of time to figure out exactly what police requirements will be in that area. I don't necessarily think that we added added police services through the Charlottetown process on the onset. It was conditions that were added to our approval. So I guess that's kind of how it played out in Charlottetown. I can't really speak to or really commit to anything today myself by adding any police services, but that's kind of how it had played out in the Charlottetown area.
And Jason, I respect that, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I guess history tells that police services are needed and added when this type of facility happens. We've gone through, or you have gone through Charlottetown, and it's evident that once we moved on to Park Street, that the need and the feeling that police services were required were evident enough to start funding for additional police officers. So I think it's an oversight to think that that would not be the case in our scenario, and I would hope that we would be treated equally in regards to the resources to keep our residents feeling safe and secure, because if we're not feeling safe and secure, as Jason indicated, regardless of the reality, they're not safe and secure. So I just, ultimately, I want to see this move ahead. I want to see the resources for our residents, but I want the residents in that area to feel as safe and secure as possible, and I don't want it to be a drain on our police services for other policing matters that are required throughout our city, not just in that area. So it's concerning that that's not part of the proposal when it's evident that it was a need in another municipality that's dealing with the exact same thing.
I think just one thing to note might be that some of the discussions around police services within municipalities is outside of our division as well. So in terms of this particular proposal, certainly didn't include any additional funding for police services. But I do understand that certainly municipalities have relationships with other avenues of government and are working and certainly have that opportunity to negotiate police services in that regard. So that's just a bit of a response to that.
Thank you, council and councillors, Deputy Jason, Ann, and Mike, and members of the public. I think with that, we'll continue to move on with our meeting unless there's anything else. Okay, so at this point, presentation has been made. There are a couple other items here. Later this evening, there will be a resolution on this matter for council to vote on. So maybe we'll just take a 30-second recess as some people are getting up to depart. All right, we're going to continue here, council, so we can, so we're at 6:40. Brian, if you want to fire us back, unmute us, we're good? Okay. All right, so we'll continue with our meeting. We'll move on to item 5, which is Culvert Connect policy. Councillor Adams, also thank you to Councillor Adams for sharing the new one-pager for council, identifying what the issue is, backgrounds and attachments. Hopefully all of councils had the opportunity to read that in the package, and I think it'd be helpful for staff and all of council. So thank you, Councillor Adams, for being first out the gate.
Okay, so I guess as council would have seen, my reason for putting this on, I'm just, I guess as councillors, and it's not just me, a couple others have received the same comments from residents regarding the Culvert Connect. I know, Brian, you have the policy up online now, so we're good there. Residents are being told that they're not being given any information, only verbally. So there's no handout being given. That's what's been reported to me. Even though I know that the committee, Justin and Corey, you guys had a nice little bullet point, easy to read explanation of the program. So I'm being told that that's not being given to residents. I also had wanted to know how many people have inquired about it, how many people have actually followed through, and what contractors are being used, because it's been reported, and I'm not, and when I say it's been reported, I'm just saying this is what I've been told, is that people are being told they can only use certain contractors. So I thought we were of the, I thought we were to go out, get a price from a contractor that could do it, and then come back to the city with the estimate and then work it out from there, as long as the contractor was within the parameters set out by tech services. But I'm being told that that's not the case. So I guess I just wanted some clarification on those things. And if anybody else can jump in if they want anything else.
I just wanted to add that I did have a similar comment to what Councillor Adams said, and I followed up with our CAO, Gordon, and Gordon went back and we looked, and I think there was a miscommunication. The timelines that Gordon and I had, when I had talked to him and then he had given the information, I think it fit within those guidelines, so I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt for that one. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. Perfect. I'm good.
You're good?
Yeah.
Director McDonald? Hey, Aaron.
Hi. So you want to try to answer some of those questions?
That'd be great, sure.
So, so far, the bulk of the people that have come in, we've had some calls either that asked for, when it first was the word out, I think after one of these meetings when it was talked about, a few people called, and we had an application form previously. This program existed, I'll say, in a different version per, I don't know, 8 years, we'll say. I look at Councillor McDougall, I can't say for sure, but it was the 50-50 program, so there was some adjustments done to it this year based on the percentage and that sort of thing. So we already had an existing form that people would, when they called, so we would send them that form. A lot of people seem to be, then the form was also, it was online, so it got highlighted to make sure it was on our portion of the page, I'll say. So the majority of the people that we've got from have not actually called, they've actually had the application, so they've either been in contact with yourselves or found it online or have completed the application and brought it in. So typically how it works is they bring in an application, 123 Central Street, we'll say, for example, and I'm interested in doing it. We try and get the information from them, so we have contact information. We had to update it to put an email address because we started actually wanting to be able to share information back with them. So, as you stated, they are the resident are responsible to get the pricing. So in order to get the pricing from contractors, they wanted to know what they had to ask them to do. So I went on and asked staff to send me a couple, like I'll say, for example, one resident, if there's 3 or 4 on the street, maybe the spokesperson, but then we try and get email addresses for all of them so that they're all getting the same information. Not everyone has an email address, but so then we typically have, I'll say, these 4 typical cross sections or details of how the work's to be done, so that can be relayed by the resident to a contractor so they'll know what they're pricing. Staff have also, everybody's lot is a little different where the water's draining and that, so staff have taken it on when they get the additional help in the summer to actually go and survey all the individual locations. They do up a map of the location. That map goes with these 4 or 5 standard details, we'll say, to the resident so that they know what they're going to ask their contractor to actually price. So when we talk on contractors, we give them a list of 4 or 5 people that have done work in Summerside in the last little while of this type. We tell them you can get somebody beyond that if you want. You can choose out of that 5 who you want. We need to see, to comply with the program, we need to see 2 quotes from whoever. We'll give you 5 names of some contractors. We will not award work until we have the second quote because we need to make sure, we want them to make sure they're getting a fair deal, but also that we, the city, are getting it. We tell them if they have a relationship, I'll say, Carrie has a company and Norma has a company and Justin is more comfortable dealing with one of the two contractors, we say you can choose with everyone you want, but our ration or portion of the cost share is based on the lowest of those two prices. But one, if you have a relationship and that's who you want to do, we're not tying you to deal with the lowest one, but we're only going to support and pay up to the percentages on the lower one. So we also have I have a list here now of about 25 people that have submitted. They're not all complete yet through the application process. Some of them have already got the work completed. Others were waiting on the second. Some have provided no pricing yet, and some have provided only one price, so we're waiting on the second price. We probably have, I'm saying about, of the 25, I'd say 12 of them have had two prices and have been approved to do the work. There's probably another 5 to 10 that we haven't got any prices from. 3 we've gotten one price from, so they're all in various stages where they're chasing contractors for the pricing and what have you. We've had prices in from, although we give them 5 names, we've had 3 different contractors on various locations provide pricing. So we know that there's at least 3 different contractors that have been responding to the residents and pricing the work for them. I'm trying to think what else there was that the questions there was. I have 25 down, and as of, we had another list here, our admin tries to keep a running tally to help us keep track of who may walk in to make sure we don't miss someone. Of the 25, we haven't surveyed the last 3 because we had a budget amount initially and we were getting close to that budget amount. We only surveyed the ones we felt we were going to get to this year. Recently that number got adjusted, so now we're trying to coordinate to go and survey those remaining 3. We were surveying a few beyond what we thought, just so at least we'd have the survey work done when we had the additional summer help. It's not going to change how they're going to have to do it if they do it this year or next year, so we're trying to fill time with the students to make sure we would survey additional ones. Plus, we were kind of prioritizing by whoever came in first, and then, like you say, I probably got about 10 here that we don't have pricing for, so until we get firm pricing from those, we can't give the go-ahead. They've been all, only a couple of them have been what we'll call corner lots, so they've had 2 sides to fill. The rest of them, we kind of got an average of those and figure, okay, there's down where we think we're going to get to this year. We have enough now to even do the increased budget amount, so we will not be, anybody else that calls will say, look, we're waiting on about 10 prices, depending on what those prices come in at, whether we're going to be able to do more this year or not. But we'll keep their information on a list and say, here's where we are as of, I think one list here I had was June 10th. Now this is more current, almost the end of June, so there's only 2 extra people in that time, so. I guess it's been successful in that we've been getting people that have come in with their information, have been, as I said, the program existed for 8 years. Some of the majority of the people are, I'll say, the 75%ers, and because they were there since '99, I still see a couple or 2 or 3 on here or 4 that are still 50% that are still interested in doing it based on they're not, I'll say, a resident since '99. That was the cutoff date. So we have people that are still. But every year we always had a few people that partake in the program when it was 50%. Keep going if there's any more.
No, I guess my big thing is, and I know it's like, unless you're in it, the whole process is sort of like foreign to you. Like I wouldn't even know where to start if I contacted you to do ours. I'm not contacting you to do ours, but the thing is that if we give a handout when the staff go to chat with them, then at least maybe then everybody will be on the same page and they won't be like, they won't. If you said something, if you could tell the same person, 2 different people the same thing, but one might go off in another direction
100%.
with it.
I could tell.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, same as you tell.
I could say the same story to 3 and people are going to interpret it a little different. Yeah.
Yeah. So this way, at least they'll have that in front of them and they can reference back to that, and it might sort of keep residents all sort of on the same straight and narrow, and then I think as a result, it might be easier on you guys and us in the long run, but that was really my only thing, because people were sort of going here, there, and everywhere with it, so I was like, let's just clear the air and get it all out there, so. I'm good. If we can start giving out a handout when we do the visits, then.
Yeah, we haven't created a handout, like to say what the,
But can we just give them what Justin and Corey and the committee had created? Is that suffice to give?
Are you referring to the part of the package that's like 2 pages that kind of just says what the program is?
Yeah, like is that appropriate?
That is-
to
Perhaps we
give?
can just ask technical services to loop in with our comms group and just put together a simple one-pager
Yeah.
that can be used.
Like just a
that just
bullet
reflects the
point,
policy.
easy,
Sure.
like, yeah, just super simple bullet point.
Great.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Councillor Adams. Thank you, Director McDonald. We'll move on now to item 5, the Ward 5 by-election. As council's aware, we now have a vacancy at in Ward 5 here in the city of Summerside. We followed the same process as we did last time for our last by-election, and applied the same general principles, which is to have a by-election as soon as possible, recognizing a few things. We are mandated to have a by-election within 6 months of the seat becoming vacant. That would put us somewhere around December. Couple of points through discussions with myself and the CAO's office. We didn't think it was prudent to have a by-election in the middle of the summer, as a lot of residents are away and people aren't paying that much of attention. So we looked to early fall. We worked with Elections PI to find a suitable date. The date selected here is October 1st, which would be a Tuesday. Under the Municipal Government Act, municipal elections happen on Mondays, except where there is a national holiday on the Monday, then the by-election can happen on, or any election can happen on the Tuesday. Monday, the 31st, would be National Truth and Reconciliation Day. So the proposed by-election would be on October 1st, 2024. That would mean the advance poll dates would be September 21st, which is a Saturday, Saturday, September 21st, Monday, September 23rd, Friday, September 27th. The by-election will be held at the Credit Union Place for ease of access for all residents. Finding a location in Ward 5 was rather challenging, but we wanted to make sure we had one in the city, and the Credit Union Place is accessible and provides parking, and very familiar with undertaking these types of processes. So that's really the quick summary here on item 5, and then there'll be a resolution where we have to formally appoint the election officers for the by-election. But today would be letting everyone know that October 1st, 2024, we'll have a by-election for Ward 5, and the advance poll dates are the ones that I set out before. Any questions, concerns, comments? Councillor Duran?
Just that the date in the package is wrong, is that?
Yes, it has changed. It has changed since then. September 23rd originally was the proposed date, but there were issues with the advance poll days at the Credit Union Place, so it has been adjusted. I think there is an updated package was sent once we figured that out, so it is October 1st. But you can still vote on Monday, September 23rd, because that's an advance poll. But yes, correct. October 1st. Okie dokie?
And
Yes.
if public are wanting information, they contact Elections PEI?
In terms of, look, they want to, sorry, you said,
Yeah, when they want, if somebody wants to put their name in or think about putting their name forward, they contact Elections PEI?
yes, they
with that?
contact Elections PI. Elections PI operates the election, runs our
Yes.
by-elections.
Don't-
Yep, and the
It's
nomination
not
form.
City
Nope,
Hall, it's not.
It is not.
City, it's all run by Elections
City of
PEI.
Summerside uses Elections PI to
Yeah.
run our municipal elections and our municipal by-elections. Yeah, so nomination forms would be available from Elections PEI. Great. Probably not like tomorrow. We have to formally appoint them, but soon. Okay. Great. So with that, we'll adjourn our committee of the whole meeting, if everyone's okay with that, and move quickly into our special council meeting. So I'll call to order the special council meeting here in the city of Summerside of July 2nd, 2024 at 6:57 p.m. I'll call for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Councillor McDougall, seconded. Councillor Duran, all in favor of the agenda, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, changes? Hearing none, it is carried. Moment for any member of council to declare a conflict of interest with respect to any item on the agenda. Hearing none, we'll move into resolutions. The resolutions A, B, and C are going to be read and introduced by Councillor Adams in her role as Chair of Bylaw and Governance. I will read in D, and then Resolution E will be read in by Councillor Duran. Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go, some of the numbers are different on the agenda from what they are on the paper, on the resolutions we signed, so I'm just going to go by the ones we signed, because I think those are the correct ones. Resolution 24-059. Okay, whereas pursuant to the Municipal Government Act, sections 143 and 158, Summerside City Council is required to pass a bylaw when land is transferred below fair market value. And whereas CS-41 Disposition of PID 300061 bylaw was approved as read a first time at the council meeting on June 17, 2024, be it resolved that CS-41 Disposition of PID 300061 bylaw be hereby read a second time. Schedule A CS-41 Disposition of PID 300061 bylaw is attached. And then the bylaw is attached for information, and that was available online, and that's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. So resolution COS 24059, moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Morrison, is on the floor. Comments, questions, statements from members of council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? The resolution is carried unanimously. Councillor Adams.
Resolution COS 24-060, whereas pursuant to the Municipal Government Act, sections 143 and 158, Summerside City Council is required to pass a bylaw when land is transferred below fair market value, and whereas CS-41 Disposition of PID 300061 bylaw was read a first time at the June 17, 2024 council meeting, and whereas CS-41 Disposition of PID 300061 bylaw was read a second time at this council meeting, be it resolved that CS-41 Disposition of PID 300061 bylaw be hereby approved as read a second time. That's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McColman.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Resolution COS 24-060, moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor McColman, is on the floor. Comments, questions from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Please indicate by saying aye. I should have said all those in favor, please indicate. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye again.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the resolution is carried. Councillor.
And the last one, resolution COS 24-061, whereas pursuant to the Municipal Government Act, sections 143 and 158, Summerside City Council is required to pass a bylaw when land is transferred below fair market value, and whereas CS-41 Disposition of PID 300061 bylaw was read and approved as read and approved at two separate meetings of council held on separate days, be it resolved that CS-41 Disposition of PID 300061 bylaw be formally adopted, and that's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Resolution COS 24-061, moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Morrison, is on the floor. Comments, questions, statements from council? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the resolution is carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Moving on, I will read the next one in Resolution COS 24-062, moved by Councillor Cameron, seconded by Councillor Duran. Whereas a vacancy has occurred in Ward 5 in the city of Summerside, and whereas the Municipal Government Act 2018 states in Part 3, Section 60, Article 1, the council shall declare a by-election to fill the vacancy. And whereas a date for the election day to be set no later than 6 months after the vacancy has occurred, and whereas Elections PEI has successfully run past elections that have the staff and expertise to run the upcoming by-election in a professional, efficient, and competent manner. Be it resolved that Council for the City of Summerside appoint Elections PEI Electoral Officer Tim Garrity to act in the capacity of Municipal Electoral Officer, MEO, and Paul Allen to act as Deputy Municipal Electoral Officer for the upcoming by-election that will be occurring on Tuesday, October 1st, 2024. Note to Council in your package, the date is now Tuesday, October 1st, 2024. That's a change from the resolution you have in your package. Resolution COS 24-062, moved by Councillor Cameron, second by Councillor Duran, is on the floor. Any comments, questions, statements from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the resolution is carried. Councillor Duran.
Thank you, Your Worship. COS 24-063. And I guess just prior to reading this out, just in response to the presentation we had earlier, I think this is probably a more appropriate time to sort of weigh in just ever so briefly. And I just wanted to sort of say that obviously we all know that we're not here tonight to sort of reevaluate the need and to reevaluate the site. I think we're more here to confirm whether or not the conditions that we had set out earlier in January have been satisfied. I know there's still a couple of unknowns that we went over, but I think in general that those conditions, I feel that they were. So I will be moving this tonight, and I will be asking for a seconder. Resolution COS 24-063. Whereas Summerside City Council approved the Department of Housing, Land and Communities request for a restricted use approval to allow an emergency housing shelter under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw in the institutional I zone at 25 Frank Mellor Street. And whereas the approval was subject to the following conditions. Number one, staff and council approval of a site plan. Number two, council approval of the operational and staffing model following the presentation by the operator. And three, council approval of a safety plan with 24-hour security with input from police services. And whereas staff approved the site plan on May 10th, 2024, and council approved the site plan on July 2nd, 2024. And whereas council approved the operational plan and staffing model on July 2nd, 2024. And whereas council approved the safety and security plan in consultation with police services on July 2nd, 2024. Be it resolved that the conditions attached to the restricted use emergency housing shelter approval granted on January 15th, 2024 meet the satisfaction of City Council are hereby removed.
Can I make a comment or a suggestion regarding additional requirement?
Yeah, just 1 second, Councillor Snow. We'll get the resolution on the floor officially, and then we'll take comments, questions, statements. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Do you have a seconder?
Moved by myself. I do not have a seconder yet. I would be looking for one at this time. Councillor Morrison.
Resolution COS 24-063, moved by Councillor Duran, seconded by Councillor Morrison, is on the floor. Any comments, questions, statements from council? Councillor Snow, we'll start with you.
I would propose, I wish I would have asked this question earlier. I think I know the answer. I do not believe there's any sidewalk in that area up there leading into the shelter area, for one. If there is not, I would propose that we request the province pay for a sidewalk to the shelter. This is not just at a left field. This is something they previously did at Park Street and was approved. I would also request that we get funding for the police resources similar to Charlottetown, so we can do a percentage based on beds, same as they did in Charlottetown. I think that is a fair request on our behalf as of a city. I think it's short-sighted to think that somehow it'll be different in Summerside in regards to police services and so on. They set the precedent. I think we have one opportunity to make sure that we do as best we can for our residents to make sure that those are in place as we navigate the next few months. And then to your point, Your Worship, earlier you mentioned a review after 12 months, and I think that is something that we should definitely do, an operational review, come back and see how things are going before it moves further. So I would propose that we add those into the approval.
Cool.
Councillor McDougall?
Corey, did you add the review, the 12-month review?
Yes, I don't know if I'm cutting in or out, and if I am, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
no, I thought I heard that, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna propose too. And the only other thing I had was, I believe this is on private property, so I don't know about the sidewalk, what we do with that, so, anyway.
Councillor Cameron and Councillor Adams and then Councillor McCollum.
Right, I just had one extra addition under the operational portion, and that is like a firm commitment from the province that people who are not staying there the night still have access to the showers. I think that is a big thing that we hear a lot of, and I think people deserve basic hygiene needs being met, whether or not they're staying there or not. If the showers are there, even if it is a 2-hour window every second day or something, but they should have access to showers, even if they are not staying there.
I support that 100% as well, Councillor Cameron, thanks, I forgot that.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess, like everybody else, I'm just disappointed that as a city, we haven't received the extra policing funding that that Charlottetown has. I don't expect to get the same, obviously, because our numbers are not the same, but getting nothing, I don't think that is what the residents deserve. The tender to build this did go out before staff. Like I mentioned with Jason and Ann, I do have an issue with there being no staffing process, no formal staffing process for the operations manager in place. I don't think hand-picking the position is fair to anybody. I think that is, from what I can understand, that's what happened at the Charlottetown Outreach Center, and we all know how that went. And I don't like that we're not being government run. I feel we're being put in the same position that the Charlottetown Outreach Center was when they were given, it was given to a not-for-profit to run. I know that not being run by government, it proved to be very costly for many ways, for residents and for clients of the Outreach Center, and just the safety of everybody involved, including the people that work there. And also the not-for-profit group is unexperienced. They said that tonight. They have no experience in running this type of thing, and that, like I just said, it did not bode well elsewhere. So I can't, I hope that it would go better in Summerside, but the one thing we said when we did our standing committee presentations is we do not want what Charlottetown was given, and we are being given pretty much what Charlottetown's been given in the form of how it's going to be operated, and that did not go well. So, yeah, that's all I have.
Okay. I also would agree with Councillor Corey. Under the operational needs, I'm satisfied with what has been presented to us as a council, mayor and council, but I really believe that there needs to be firm and confirmed provincial funding in parity for the policing resources for the Summerside Police Services Department, simply because once that operation commences, then the day-to-day, evening patrols, those kinds of things, the backup support is also taxing on our Summerside Police Services. So we may not get the same number as in Charlottetown, but I think in fairness, there should be more provincial funding to provide some additional resourcing police services in Summerside.
Thank you, Your Worship. And it wasn't, the wording wasn't part of the resolution, but I know we had mentioned a 12-month review. So if stuff isn't going down the way that we want it to, or residents want to, or clients don't want to, we have that availability or that option to reevaluate after month 12 and try something else, or. He did, okay, yeah, he was kind of, okay, good, sorry, Corey.
Okay, just generally, based on council's comments, it doesn't sound like it's worth necessarily taking this resolution to a vote. It sounds like council would like to request sidewalk, police funding for equivalent number of officers, 12-month review, which would be easy, and was there one more? And the shower, access to shower. So the operations, sort of back to the, in an opposite, we start to cross into the telling the province who to hire to do provincial jobs, starts to get us in this situation, but
that was
if that's what you want.
That was number 2 in our list of things, to hire somebody to do it, and they're not hiring somebody, they're handpicking somebody. Hiring somebody is a hiring process, and you pick the best candidate. By just picking somebody, you're just picking somebody, and that did not go well before, so I don't see that they've met, I don't think they've met that requirement.
Just, I could be totally off on this, but I think there's a fine line where they are hiring, like, where does it get into basically what you're suggesting, Mayor? You know, like, we can't be in that position to tell them how they should do what they need to do. And I think, wouldn't we be told that very quickly? Like, we're not the employer. And I'm just wondering, and I'm certainly not against, or I just think we're not the employer.
Well, overall, it sounds like council, we have a number of things, I don't think, well, 2 options. You can either include these additional conditions in the resolution, or you could direct staff to re-engage with the province on these issues and say that these are additional requirements the council would be looking for, and to prepare a subsequent resolution at another council meeting.
I think that's probably the best.
Councillor Duran?
Just to follow up on that, I know Jason said his target was October 1st, so just I'd like to make sure that whatever we do now doesn't push that to December 1st or January 1st.
Is there any risk in just adding the additional requests that we have as part of the negotiation, as the approval? We approve it as a council. They come back with, we can, we can't, so on. We adjust and reapprove at that point. Maybe the requests that we made regarding sidewalk policing, ear review, that sort of, maybe it's nothing to them, and they say, okay, yes, we want to see this move forward for the individuals that really need it. We've obviously set a precedent that we've done it in the past, so we should do it again. That would be the logical answer, I would think, but who knows? But I think we put it out there, if all council is in favor of doing so. I think our requests are not, I'm not too sure on the operational thing that Councillor Adams, I understand completely what she's saying. I just don't know how far into the weeds we get into their day-to-day operations. But in regards to our city resources and services for our citizens when they are up and operational, and how it affects our operations, I think that is stipulations we should put in there, whether like the policing, the sidewalk, that sort of stuff, make sure the people are safe to and from the facility. The policing, obviously there's going to be a need. The showers is something that we've been dealing with for a long time here in the city with the unhoused. So I think our requests are very reasonable, and I don't think there'd be any reason to hold it up. And if they really want to get this up and running for October 1st, they would easily accept those conditions and we move on. We were told February, now we're into summer. So I don't really want to hold up too much longer, but I do think we need to make sure that the boxes are checked as we're going through this process.
Deputy Mayor Snow, the request for the 2 officers would have to go through another department, I believe. I think they said that tonight, but
That's fine. So I'm not, and again, I'm not pulling this out of anywhere. While we were waiting and going through meeting notes, I went to the city of Charlottetown when they were doing the review for Park Street, and the request that came from Charlottetown as part of the approval. And before the approval went forward, these conditions had to be met. So they have been met in Charlottetown. Regardless of the department, it's all coming from, we can say it's not my department, so on. I think that's an excuse on their part. And I'm not saying they're saying that. They would easily have to make the call to the conversations with the other departments to say, hey, we need this additional resources to make this happen. Let's face it, it's all one big pot of money that we all pay our taxes and it goes into. So I think our request is very reasonable, and under those circumstances, I can support it. Without those, I think we might be setting ourselves up for going begging in the future, and I don't think that always works well.
okay, sounds good.
Okay, council, let's try and get this sorted then. So the way to do this, I suppose, would be that if we follow on Deputy Snow's suggestion, we would simply take the be it resolved that, and that would be led with an add whereas, and then it be it resolved that the following conditions be met by the provincial government. And maybe we'll just go through them in order and we can decide if we want them included or not. Is that okay? Okay, so the first question is the question of a sidewalk from Roy Boats Avenue along Frank Mellor Street to the location of the shelter. I'll maybe ask if anyone in council does not want that in, and then we'll start from there. Okay, so that's one of the conditions. The second would be police funding. Probably the appropriate way to do that would be police funding equivalent to funding that would been provided to the department, the Charlottetown Police Department for services, for additional police funding for additional police resources equivalent to those provided to the Charlottetown Police Department for the operation and oversight security with respect to the Park Street Emergency Shelter. Would be 2. Does anyone in council not want that? Okay. Third would be the 12-month review. Okay. Fourth would be to institute access to showers and sanitary services at the proposed shelter location. With some that is open and available within the parameters of an operational program for all residents who are not necessarily clients of the shelter. Anyone not want that? Okay. Now we can get to the operations manager question, and I'll put that out to the floor as to, again, whether we want to direct. I do certainly understand your point, Councillor Adams, and I think here in the city of Summerside, I think we would not want to proceed in that manner. We'd want to post a job open to the public. But then the question just is whether that is overstepping our grounds with respect to telling the province how to conduct their hiring processes. So I'll open that to the council.
I hear Councillor Adams' concerns, but I think with having that 12-month review in there, that will tell you how the operation is going, and then we commit. Hello. Then we can deal with it at that time. But I think right at this point, we need a shelter, and I wouldn't want to delay it anymore.
Okay, members of council, do you want to include that as a condition or not? It's maybe by quick show of hands if you want to include it as a condition. No? Okay. All right, so we won't include it as a condition. We have the 4. I don't know how we're gonna read all this in now. Yeah, why don't you read it in? I guess, Councillor Duran, if you can read it in, and then I suppose you could, I'm looking to Brian or to JP, but, it'd read, additional, B, and whereas the additional conditions that, we're gonna have to add it to it at some point. I don't know how to properly add it, because there's a bunch of stuff here, and I can't say that again. I don't know what I said.
Can you take a picture of it?
Well, I didn't write it down. I just said it off the top of my head. That was on the record.
got it
You could
recorded.
reference
We have it
the,
recorded.
you could reference the recorded. Sure, so you could reference the recordings. All right, Councillor Duran, over to you.
All right, I'll just start over.
Bring it together.
COS 24-063, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Morrison. Whereas Summerside City Council approved the Department of Housing, Land and Communities request for a restricted use approval to allow an emergency housing shelter under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw in the institutional I zone at 25 Frank Mellish Street. And whereas the approval was subject to the following conditions. Number 1, staff and council approval of a site plan. Number 2, council approval of the operational and staffing model following the presentation by the operator. And number 3, council approval of a safety plan with 24-hour security with input from police services. And whereas staff approved the site plan on May 10th, 2024, and council approved the site plan on July 2nd, 2024. And whereas council approved the operational plan and staffing model on July 2nd, 2024. And whereas council approved the safety and security plan in consultation with police services on July 2nd, 2024. And whereas council has imposed additional conditions that will be clarified by staff as they listen back to our recorded
I'll
meeting
jump in
minutes.
for you here,
Please
Councillor.
do.
Just the last 3, whereas the approved, the approved, the approved, those probably should be reviewed. Reviewed the site plan, reviewed the operational plan, reviewed the safety security plan. And then the council placed the following final conditions to the restricted use emergency housing shelter on July 2nd, 2024, and then that should list the 4 that were on the record with respect to the sidewalk, police funding, 12-month review, and access to showers. And be it resolved that the satisfaction of the additional conditions by the provincial government shall act as approval for the restricted use application.
Took the words out of my mouth.
Can you please read the one regarding the operations?
Whereas council approved the operational plan and staffing model on July 2nd, 2024.
Is that it?
Yeah, I was just gonna question
There's
that.
something there that says by the operations manager or person that you read, it ended with that.
No.
And whereas the approval was subject to the following conditions. Number 2 was council approval of the operational and staffing model following the presentation by the operator.
Okay, so that did not happen because the operator is not chosen.
Yeah, they were all reviewed, I guess. We're saying that each one was reviewed and council put those additional conditions. Absolutely. Presentation by I think they would say that they also are the operator, like they're operating it, they are hiring whoever that group is to do some of the additional services. That's how I understood. They are still responsible for the operations of the unit.
So, just a question here. So council, and whereas council approved the operational plan and staffing model on July 2nd, 2024, be it resolved with the 4 additional includes in that operational plan, right?
Right, so starting at the 3rd and whereas, the changes would be approved would be deleted and reviewed would be inserted. On the 4th whereas, approved would be deleted, reviewed would be inserted. And the same on the 5th whereas, and then the final would be in the whereas, the council has the language I used earlier, imposed the following conditions that we spoke to: sidewalk, police funding equivalent, 12-month review, and access to a shower program. Is that good? You gonna be able to cut and paste that? Okay. All right, with resolution COS 24-063 as amended, On the floor, moved by Councillor Duran, seconded by Councillor Morrison. Any further comments, questions, statements from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Oh, one, Councillor Adams, nay. And the resolution is carried. Thank you, council. With that, we will adjourn our meeting for this evening. Brian, if you are able to send that resolution both to acting CAO for the week and then also to members of council, that would be great, to just make sure we get all the wording right. Great. Thanks, council. Have a great evening. Great job on Canada Day, JP, team, everyone. It was awesome.